So this is the best humanity has to offer?
I am standing right here. I am not done yet.
Somewhere out in deep space, there is a rule almost every alien empire believes. Humans are weak. Humans are slow. Humans are not a threat. This idea has been repeated for so long that most species stopped questioning it. But sources deep inside the galaxy's oldest war archives suggest this belief is about to be destroyed forever. One alien commander said something no one expected. She looked straight at a human and said, "Defeat me, human, and I'll be yours." She laughed when she said it. She was sure of herself. She had never lost a fight in her life. But what she did not know is that this single sentence would open a door she could never close again. Here is what you are about to discover. First, why this alien empire secretly feared humans long before this fight ever happened. Second, who this human really was, and why his past was hidden from everyone, even from his own crew. Third, the shocking truth about a secret empire that had been watching Earth for years, waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. This is not just a fight between two people. This is the story of two civilizations about to collide. And the woman who mocked all of humanity is about to learn a lesson she will never forget. If you love stories where humans are underestimated and then rise up in the most unexpected way, stay with me. This story has twists you will not see coming. Let me show you exactly how this happened. Far beyond the edge of known space, there was a massive empire called the Valith Dominion. It was one of the strongest powers in the galaxy. For 1,000 years, the Valith ruled with fear. Their ships were fast, their weapons were deadly, and their leaders believed they were the smartest beings ever created. The Valith had a strange custom. Whenever they met a new species, they tested them. They would challenge one member of that species to a fight. If the challenger lost, the Valith would call that entire species weak. This was their way of deciding who deserved respect and who did not. Humans were new to the galaxy. Only a few decades earlier, Earth had sent its first ships beyond the solar system. Most alien empires had barely noticed humanity. They were too small, too new, and too quiet to matter. But the Valith noticed something else. They noticed that humans never stopped moving forward, no matter how many times they failed. This bothered the Valith more than anyone admitted. At the center of the Valith Dominion was a commander named Solari Vex. She was young for her rank, but her mind was sharp and her skills were unmatched. She had defeated warriors twice her size. She had never once needed to ask for help. To her, humans were simply another weak species waiting to be humbled. One day, a human trade ship crossed into Valith territory. It was a small, unarmed vessel. The crew had no idea they had entered dangerous space. Solari's ship intercepted them within minutes. She boarded the human ship with a group of soldiers. The human crew stood together, calm but alert. Among them was a man named Ryland Cade. He was not a soldier. He was not famous. He worked as a systems engineer, fixing broken machines on long space journeys. He had a quiet way about him, the kind of person who listens more than he speaks. Solari looked at the crew and smiled. She had done this many times before with other species. She expected fear. She expected them to beg. Instead, she saw something different. The humans looked worried. Yes, but they did not look broken. She turned to their captain and made her usual challenge. One of you will fight me. If you win, you go free. If you lose, your ship and everything on it belongs to the Dominion. The captain hesitated. No one on the crew had ever been trained to fight an alien warrior. Solari's species was taller, stronger, and faster than any human. It seemed like an impossible challenge. Then Ryland stepped forward. No one expected this. He was not the strongest person on the ship. He was not the fastest. But he had a strange calmness in his eyes, like he already knew something the others did not. Solari studied him for a moment. She almost laughed. "You, a simple worker," she said. "This will be quick." Ryland said nothing. He simply nodded. This is when Solari said the words that would later be repeated across the entire galaxy. She leaned close and said, "Defeat me, human, and I'll be yours." It was meant as a joke, a way to mock him in front of his crew. She wanted him to feel small before the fight even began. But something about the way Ryland looked at her made her pause. Just for a second. It was a small flicker of doubt, so quick she barely noticed it herself. The fight was set for the following day, inside a massive Valith arena built specifically for challenges like this. Word spread fast. Other alien species who had heard rumors about humans wanted to see this fight with their own eyes. Some came out of curiosity. Others came hoping to see humanity humiliated once and for all. But far away, in a hidden sector of space that few even knew existed, a very different group was watching this event unfold. They were not Valith. They were not human. They were something else entirely, an old and secretive power that had stayed hidden for generations. They had been waiting for a sign. And this fight, this simple challenge between a mocking commander and a quiet engineer, was about to give them exactly what they needed. The arena was unlike anything Ryland had ever seen. It stretched upward like a giant metal bowl, with thousands of alien spectators filling every seat. Bright lights lit up the fighting floor. Banners with strange symbols hung from the walls. The noise was loud and constant, a mixture of cheering, laughing, and low growling sounds from species Ryland could not even name. He stood at the edge of the arena floor, wearing simple gray clothes. No armor, no weapons. The Valith rules said the human could only use his hands and whatever skill he had. Solari, on the other hand, wore sleek black and gold armor that shimmered under the arena lights. She looked confident, almost bored, as if this fight was already over before it started. Before the match began, a Valith announcer spoke to the crowd. He explained the challenge in a mocking tone, calling humans the newest curiosity species and joking about how short the fight would likely be. The crowd laughed. Ryland stayed quiet, his eyes steady, watching everything around him carefully. What the crowd did not know was that Ryland had spent years training in a very different kind of combat. Long before he became an engineer, he had studied hand-to-hand fighting styles that focused on using an opponent's strength against them. He was not the biggest or the strongest, but he understood movement, timing, and patience better than most people realized. The match began. Solari moved first, fast and aggressive. She expected Ryland to freeze or panic. Instead, he stepped sideways at the last second, avoiding her strike completely. The crowd went silent for a moment, surprised. Solari's eyes narrowed. She attacked again, this time faster. Ryland ducked under her arm and moved behind her, forcing her to turn quickly to face him again. It was not a powerful counterattack, but it showed something important. He was not afraid. For the next several minutes, the fight continued like this. Solari attacked with strength and speed. Ryland avoided, blocked, and repositioned himself again and again. He was not trying to overpower her. He was trying to understand her. The crowd, once laughing, began to grow quiet. Some leaned forward in their seats. Something about this fight did not match what they expected. Solari became frustrated. She was used to opponents who either attacked recklessly or gave up quickly. Ryland did neither. He stayed calm, almost too calm, like he already knew how this would end. At one point, Solari swung hard toward his head. Ryland ducked just in time, then used the momentum of her attack to push her slightly off balance. It was a small mistake on her part, barely noticeable, but it was the first mistake she had made in years. She recovered quickly, But something inside her shifted. For the first time, doubt crept into her mind. She had told this human, in front of everyone, that if he defeated her, he would winches. She had said it as a joke. But now, watching him move with such control, she wondered if she had underestimated him. The fight went on for nearly 10 minutes, far longer than any of her previous matches with other species. The crowd was no longer laughing. They were watching closely, whispering among themselves. Eventually, Solari made another mistake. She overextended a strike, trying to end the match quickly. Ryland used this moment perfectly. He redirected her movement, causing her to lose balance completely. She fell to one knee, momentarily unable to defend herself. The entire arena went silent. Ryland stood over her, but he did not attack. He simply stepped back and waited. According to Valeth rules, a warrior who could not immediately continue was considered defeated. Solari knew this. Everyone in the arena knew this. She looked up at him, breathing heavily, shocked by what had just happened. For the first time in her life, she had lost. The crowd erupted into confused murmurs. Some Valeth soldiers moved forward nervously, unsure what to do. Solari raised a hand to stop them. She stood up slowly, her pride clearly wounded, but she did not deny the outcome. "You actually defeated me," she said quietly, almost to herself. Ryland simply nodded. "I told you I would try," he said calmly. What none of them realized was that this fight was being watched far beyond the arena. Hidden surveillance drones, disguised as small debris floating in space, had recorded every moment. These drones did not belong to the Valeth. They belonged to the secretive group watching from the shadows, the same group that had been quietly observing humanity for years. This fight was no longer just a personal matter between Solari and Ryland. It had become a signal, one that would soon reach places neither of them expected. News of Solari's defeat spread across the Valeth Dominion within hours. At first, many refused to believe it. Solari Vex was known as one of the most skilled warriors in the Empire. The idea that a simple human engineer had defeated her seemed impossible. But video recordings of the match had already leaked beyond Valeth borders. Other species began watching the footage, studying every movement Ryland made. Some admired his skill. Others dismissed it as luck. But one thing was clear: humans were no longer being ignored. Back on the human trade ship, Ryland tried to return to his normal life. He wanted to go back to fixing machines and staying out of the spotlight. But this was no longer possible. Word had reached Earth's government about what happened. Officials wanted answers. Reporters wanted interviews. Ryland, a man who avoided attention his whole life, suddenly found himself at the center of galactic curiosity. Meanwhile, Solari faced a different kind of pressure. Within the Valeth Dominion, losing to a lesser species was seen as a serious embarrassment. Some of her fellow commanders mocked her behind closed doors. Others quietly began to question the belief that had shaped their entire empire, the idea that non-Valeth species were automatically weaker. Solari herself could not stop thinking about the fight. She had studied countless species before, but none had fought the way Ryland did. He did not rely on strength. He relied on patience, timing, and calm thinking. This bothered her more than losing itself. She began to wonder what else she did not know about humans. It was during this time that the secretive group finally decided to act. They called themselves the Etherian Concord, an ancient alliance that had existed long before the Valeth Dominion rose to power. For centuries, the Etherian had remained hidden, watching different species grow and change from a distance. They rarely interfered in galactic affairs. But they had one important rule. They paid close attention to any species that showed unusual resilience, especially when facing stronger opponents. Humanity had caught their attention years earlier, long before Ryland's fight. The Etherian had quietly studied human history, noticing how humans faced disaster after disaster, yet continued to adapt and survive. Ryland's fight against Solari was not the reason the Etherian became interested in humans. It was simply the final proof they needed to make their next move. A small Etherian scout ship approached Ryland's vessel one quiet evening. It was cloaked in advanced technology, appearing as nothing more than a faint shimmer in space. When it revealed itself, the crew was stunned. No human had ever seen Etherian technology before. It looked ancient yet impossibly advanced, a strange mixture of old and futuristic design. A single Etherian representative introduced herself. She had a calm voice and a thoughtful presence. She explained that her people had watched humanity for a long time and believed the recent events involving Solari were significant. She revealed something that shocked the crew. The Etherian Concord had been quietly aware of tension, building across several alien empires for years. Many species feared that expanding powers like the Valeth Dominion would eventually try to dominate weaker civilizations, including Earth. The Etherian had been searching for a species capable of standing against this threat without relying on overwhelming military force. Ryland's fight had shown them something important. Humans did not need to be the strongest to succeed. They needed to be smart, patient, and adaptable, qualities the Etherian valued deeply. The representative extended an offer. The Etherian Concord wanted to establish contact with Earth, not as conquerors, but as allies. They believed humanity's resilience could help maintain balance across the galaxy, especially against empires that thrived on fear and dominance. This was an enormous decision, one that could change the future of humanity forever. Ryland, still just an engineer at heart, suddenly found himself standing at the center of a decision far bigger than himself. Back within the Valeth Dominion, Solari learned about the Etherian's interest in humans. This information troubled her more than her defeat ever did. The Etherian Concord was known throughout ancient records as a group that only intervened when major shifts in power were about to happen. If they were reaching out to humans, it meant something big was coming. For the first time, Solari began to question everything she believed about her own empire's future. Solari requested a private meeting with her superiors. She explained what she had learned about the Etherian Concord's interest in humanity. Most of the Valeth leadership dismissed her concerns, insisting that ancient legends about the Etherian were exaggerated stories meant to scare young warriors. They believed the Dominion's power was unquestionable. But Solari could not shake the feeling that something important was happening, something the Valeth were not prepared for. Meanwhile, Earth's leaders faced a difficult decision after being contacted by the Etherian Concord. Some government officials were excited about the possibility of powerful allies. Others were cautious, worried about becoming involved in conflicts between alien empires far beyond their understanding. Ryland was asked to be part of the discussions, mainly because he was the only human who had direct contact with both the Valeth and the Etherian. Despite his discomfort with public attention, he agreed to help, believing it was important for humanity to make informed choices rather than blind decisions. During these discussions, the Etherian representative shared more details about the growing tension across the galaxy. She explained that several smaller alien species had already been forced into unfair agreements by stronger empires like the Valeth Dominion. These smaller species lived under constant fear, unable to resist due to lack of military strength. The Etherian Concord believed that true balance in the galaxy could only be achieved if weaker species were given a fair chance to stand up for themselves. Not through war, but through unity and shared knowledge. This is why they were interested in humanity. Humans had shown, through Ryland's fight, that intelligence and resilience could overcome raw power. Earth's leaders agreed to open careful communication with the Etherian Concord, without immediately committing to a full alliance. They wanted to understand more before making permanent decisions. Back within Valeth space, tension began rising. Several smaller species that had previously bowed to Valeth dominance started showing quiet signs of resistance, inspired by stories of Ryland's unexpected victory. Rumors spread quickly, sometimes exaggerated far beyond the truth, describing humans as mysterious warriors capable of defeating even the strongest opponents. This shift worried Valeth leadership deeply. Their entire empire relied on fear to maintain control. If smaller species stopped fearing them, their power could weaken rapidly. In an attempt to regain control over the situation, Valeth leadership ordered Solari to arrange another challenge, this time under different terms designed to guarantee her victory. They wanted a clear message sent across the galaxy. Humans were not truly a threat. Solari, however, hesitated. She had changed since her defeat. She no longer saw this as a simple matter of pride. She understood that forcing another unfair fight could create even bigger consequences, especially with the Etherian Concord now paying close attention. She requested to speak with Ryland privately before agreeing to any new challenge. Their meeting took place in a neutral location, arranged carefully to avoid suspicion from both sides. Solari admitted something she had never said to anyone before. She confessed that her initial mockery toward humans came from insecurity, not confidence. She had been trained since childhood to believe that showing any weakness meant losing everything, including her place within Valeth society. Ryland listened calmly, without judgment. He explained that humans, too, often struggled with fear and pride, but had learned throughout history that facing challenges honestly, rather than through domination, led to real strength. This conversation changed something between them. What began as mockery and conflict slowly transformed into mutual respect. Solari realized that humanity's strength was not something to fear, but something that could inspire real change, even within her own empire. She made a bold decision. Instead of following her superior's orders to arrange another unfair challenge, she requested a formal meeting between Valeth leadership, human representatives, and the Etherian Concord. This request shocked her superiors. Never before had a Valeth commander openly challenged the Dominion's traditional approach to power. But Solari's growing influence, combined with the increasing attention from the Etherian Concord, made it difficult for Valeth leadership to ignore her request entirely. A historic meeting was scheduled, one that would determine the future relationship between three very different powers: the aggressive Valeth Dominion, the mysterious Etherian Concord, and the rapidly rising influence of humanity. The meeting took place aboard a neutral space station, carefully selected because it belonged to none of the three powers involved. Representatives from the Valeth Dominion arrived with visible tension, unsure how to approach a situation they had never faced before. The Etherian Concord sent a small delegation, calm and composed as always. Humanity's representatives, including Ryland, arrived last, aware that this meeting could shape humanity's future for generations to come. Solari stood beside the Valeth delegation, though her presence alone signaled how much things had changed. She was no longer simply following orders. She had become someone willing to question her own empire's traditions. The discussion began carefully. Valeth leaders tried to downplay Ryland's earlier victory, insisting it was an isolated event rather than proof of humanity's overall strength. The Etherian representative calmly countered this argument, explaining that resilience, adaptability, and intelligence mattered more than raw physical power when determining long-term stability across the galaxy. Ryland was asked to speak. Nervous but steady, he explained humanity's perspective honestly. He admitted that humans were not the strongest species in the galaxy, nor did they wish to dominate others. Instead, humanity valued cooperation, learning from mistakes, and treating others fairly, even when facing more powerful opponents. His words resonated deeply with several smaller species, observing the discussion remotely. species who had lived under constant fear of stronger empires for generations. For the first time, many of them felt a sense of hope, believing that maybe power did not have to mean domination. Tension in the room remained high, especially from Valith leadership, who worried that agreeing to fair treatment for smaller species could weaken their control over the empire. However, the Etherian Concord made it clear that continued aggression would eventually isolate the Valith Dominion from potential allies, weakening their influence far more than any single defeat ever could. Solari made a final, unexpected statement. She stood before her own leadership and admitted, publicly, that her defeat against Ryland had changed her understanding of strength. She explained that true power came from adaptability and honesty, not fear and domination. Her words carried weight, not because she was human, but because she was one of the Valith's most respected warriors, choosing to speak an uncomfortable truth. After hours of intense discussion, an agreement was reached. Instead of forcing unfair rules onto smaller species, the Valith Dominion agreed to establish fairer trade and diplomatic relationships, closely monitored by the Etherian Concord to ensure accountability. Humanity was formally recognized as an emerging power in the galaxy, one respected for intelligence and resilience rather than fear. This agreement did not erase generations of tension across the galaxy overnight, but it created a foundation for real change, something many species had hoped for but never believed possible. Ryland returned to his quiet life as an engineer, though his experience had permanently changed him. He no longer avoided responsibility, understanding now that even ordinary people could influence extraordinary events through calm courage rather than raw strength. Solari's role within the Valith Dominion also shifted. She became an important voice for change within her own empire, slowly influencing others to reconsider outdated beliefs about power and dominance. The Etherian Concord, true to their nature, returned to quiet observation, continuing to watch how these newly formed relationships developed over time. And so, what began as a mocking challenge from a confident alien commander transformed into a turning point for multiple civilizations across the galaxy, proving that true strength often comes from unexpected places. Here is the twist almost no one expected. The Etherian Concord later revealed something quietly to Ryland alone. They had studied thousands of species over centuries, and very few ever showed the specific combination of patience and calm courage that Ryland displayed during his fight with Solari. According to their records, this quality was rare, even among species with advanced technology. This meant Ryland's victory was not just luck. It was proof of something deeply human, something that had likely helped humanity survive countless hardships throughout history. Solari, once humanity's harshest critic, eventually became one of its strongest defenders across the galaxy. The woman who once mocked every human alive ended up owing her own transformation to the very species she once dismissed. This story shows that respect is never guaranteed by strength alone. Sometimes, it is earned through patience, honesty, and quiet courage. But this was only the beginning of humanity's journey among the stars. New challenges, new alliances, and new mysteries were waiting just beyond the horizon. If this opened your eyes, let's recap what we uncovered today. A single mocking challenge turned into a turning point for an entire galaxy. A quiet engineer proved that calm courage can defeat overwhelming power. And a secretive ancient alliance revealed itself, changing humanity's future among the stars forever. Stories like this remind us that strength is not always about size or power. Sometimes, the quietest person in the room holds the most important answers. If this story kept you hooked from beginning to end, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss the next chapter in humanity's journey across the galaxy. Give this video a thumbs up if you love HFY stories where humans rise up in unexpected ways. I'd also love to know what you think. Drop a comment below and tell me, if you were Ryland, standing across from Solari in that arena, what would have been going through your mind? For more stories like this, where humanity faces impossible odds and comes out stronger, check out the next video linked on your screen. And if you want early access to upcoming HFY stories before anyone else sees them, join our community by clicking the link in the description below. Thank you for watching until the very end. Stay curious, stay hopeful, and remember, sometimes the smallest voice changes everything.